tax practitioner, and this is my friend Rachel.
Hi, my name is Rachel Mariana Dorita, and I have a PhD in cancer and molecular biology, and I'm also a certified yoga and meditation instructor.
So I wanted to sit down with some tea and have a chat about the spirituality of eating food. And I've been having some deep thoughts about this lately, and I wasn't sure who to nerd out about it with except for Rachel, because we always talk about food and spiritual stuff. So here we are.
Here we are.
And we probably have different thoughts about it, but I think it's fun to just bounce ideas off each other and process. So
Absolutely.
let's have a chat.
Yeah, I feel like, this is something I mentioned this earlier, I feel like I've been thinking about this for a long time because my undergraduate studies were in agriculture, and then that was sort of like the same time that I was like getting into yoga and all that. So a lot of things were like sort of at odds with like the way, like agricultural practices were, and then I would be like in the yoga community, which is like another extreme where, like everybody, it's like be vegan and everything, and I've definitely evolved over the years.
So some people might not know what kind of agricultural practices are out there and what that's about. So, I mean, when you were just studying agriculture at the beginning, what kind of things were you?
Yeah, so I mean, I was learning a lot about it in the more traditional. Well, actually, when I say traditional, I guess that's what that would mean nowadays.
Like mainstream.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess for the purposes of this discussion, I'll call it mainstream or modern, because traditional, I feel like now should would refer to
old
more
ways.
grassroots. Yeah. So learning a lot about both with plants and animals. What industrialization has done to it. And I, originally was learning all of this from the lens of, having more efficiency and production. Then eventually, I started to look at it as like, well, at what cost? Looking at the quality of that food. Again, whether it's coming from, animal products or plants, or the plants that those animals are eating. And seeing how that has a trickle-down effect on chronic health conditions. We're starting to see different, like, nutritional deficiencies that, traditionally people didn't have to worry about because soils were tended in a certain way and food wasn't processed the way it was. So that's more coming from, not so spiritual, but, from the physical side of things. Seeing that, and then
how we treat the soil affects the quality of the food.
Yeah,
and in turn affects the quality of the human.
Yes.
How nutrient dense we are.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's something spiritual to that too, in some ways.
Oh yeah, I had the privilege of being exposed to some of the Native American spiritual practices, and they view sort of all life as part. There's a spirit realm, and so everything, there's a consciousness to everything, and so whether it anything that's coming from the earth is sort of honored in a similar way. And that's ultimately kind of where I see it, as far as spirituality goes. That to me, I'm sort of like, who are we to say one form of life is higher or lower than another, even though we may not know exactly, how they communicate, even though it's expressed differently, especially with plants. So. But that kind of sense of gratitude and being a part of that circle of energy is when you're honoring that, I feel like that's also when you get some of the most benefits from the food too. I did some experiments with kind of conscious eating and just, gratitude. And I honestly would feel a difference in the energy that I would get from the food.
It's like that very simple concept of like saying grace before you eat a meal, like, like many families.
Yeah.
Just that simple reflection can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always, going back to like the dirt and the soil, I always think about when, if you look at like the Adam and Eve story, God gave them like reign over the earth to steward it, and he planted the garden, but then he said, okay, here you go. And it was sort of up to humankind like what we were going to do with it. And I feel kind of like the more I learn about history, and particularly just very recent history from World War I and II, where we isolated all these chemicals, it's like we did all of this mad scientist crazy stuff with chemicals for war, and then we took those same chemicals and started like using them on our own soil to grow our food. Who would have thunk? And so to me, that just feels like such a spiritual, I don't know, like we're somehow thwarting ourselves by treating what we were given with some kind of, I don't know, abuse. And instead of being grateful for the land we have and stewarding it well, we just like try to suck everything we can out of it, and if it ends up being desert afterwards, we don't seem to care. Like my great-grandmother was in the Dust Bowl, and they were doing organic farming back then. They didn't even have chemicals very much, but they were monocropping, and so everything turned into a big bowl of dust. And that's crazy that it was such a short time ago, and now we're still doing the same stuff.
Oh. Yeah, I think,
it's gonna make you cry.
Oh, I know.
It's so sad. Sorry, Hosanna.
Don't worry, we'll make sure that
we'll do our best to
the world will continue to be
do
bright.
Something different.
Yeah, lovely little ladies in Hosanna. I mean, the idea of like monocropping, it makes me think, like in biology, community and diversity is extremely important. So it kind of acts on levels that we may not even know fully. Yeah, I'm not an ecologist, but there are a lot of, in ecology, looking at not just the plants, but the microbes in the soil, the insects that pollinate, and that's all part of that diversity, even within, a domesticated plant or animal situation in agriculture. And so that makes me even think about, the use of pesticides and what that's doing, and how important, say, something like the bees are to really making those crops thrive. And that pollination, there's just so much that I think is really complex, and we're learning every day, but then making these very, very big decisions on how we handle the earth without really knowing the complexities of what we're messing with.
I don't know what the fallout may be.
Exactly.
Sometimes I think about like the parallels, well, not sometimes, all the time. I'm always thinking about the parallels between like how we treat the soil and the earth and like how we treat our guts in medicine, because I have spent some time as a nurse and I love the concept of diversity, like you were saying, and how in the way we have been doing medicine, there's not a lot of value for diversity currently. It's all about isolating, ooh, this bug is the bad bug, and so we're going to kill it with this chemical, and that's an antibiotic, just trying to isolate who's the culprit and then punishing it, and wiping it off the face of existence from our body. And that's kind of the approach. And we've done the same thing with agriculture, where we're like, oh, this one bug, it's causing us a problem, so we're going to spray all of this chemicals trying to kill the bug. But the the opposite of that, or the alternative, like you're saying, is to have diversity. So it's not any one bacteria's to be at fault necessarily, but it's the imbalance of the bacteria. Like if it's all one kind or another, both is bad, you know? And by having a little bit of everybody is when we have like a healthy ecosystem. And I like to think that with people it's the same way. Like if we were all one way, it would be really unhealthy.
Right. Yeah. I love that analogy, because I've always had that feeling about humans where we all have our unique gifts, and everybody has their own version of what their best potential is going to be, and when you're following your heart, you're going to naturally find those skills that match that potential, and it's going to fit right into this chain where it's going to fill a void where maybe somebody else has different gifts, and then they'll be complementary. So yeah, it's the same. I feel like it is the same thing with our microbiome. There are so many different compounds that are being produced by different cells, and my previous area of expertise, the exosomes and vesicles, so many different ways that cells communicate with each other. And you need that diversity, though, for them to be able to have that kind of symbiosis and community to help you thrive. And then when it's out of balance, there are even methods that the community has to rectify that when you are properly supported, with the nutrition. So I feel like with illness, it's about restoring balance rather than, like you said, finding that one problem and trying to eliminate it. In the world of pharmaceuticals and even other types of therapies, there's a much lower success rate with some of these, even with genetics of, we're starting to move beyond, trying to find that one gene mutation or that one little thing. I think they're starting to realize that it's, more complicated to that, because then your body will adapt or become resistant. And
so there's a lot going on there with exosomes and DNA not necessarily being the end-all answer.
Right.
I guess what we're talking about is like environment. That when the internal environment is out of balance, it'll affect both the critters in us and the us in us.
Yeah.
Right? And I've heard that certain kinds of bacteria can actually change from one type to another just depending on the environment. Like if it's an unhealthy environment, then a neutral bacteria that could be neutral will become harmful. And then if you just adjust the environment and put that same guy into a nice healthy environment, then there's no more problems. And I think sometimes in society there may be something similar going on. Like some people are just in such a poor environment, and it causes you to go crazy and just be destructive. I know I can be that way. And if you take the same person and just put them in a peaceful environment, like get them out of the hood or whatever, not that I know everything, but I have seen this in several personal friends of mine, like you get out of a stressful environment and it's like the aspects of yourself that were kind of being triggered aren't being triggered anymore, and you can be more yourself, like the peaceful version of yourself.
Yeah, I've also noticed that you have sort of, at least I've found that I have more of a resilience when I'm in more of that healthy environment, when my body's in homeostasis, because your life as a person is never going to be perfect all the time, even when you are in a good environment. But I've found that my ability to take on problems and find solutions without having that sort of deep-seated reaction or fight or flight reaction to any little thing. I feel like that is more level and resilient, and then that in turn makes your body stay more at peace and able to heal, because when you're constantly reacting to things in stress, your body is preparing to deal with that stressor, and it's turning off all of its natural healing and resting and adjusting functions.
Yeah. It's like if you're in fight or flight, you can't really sit and fully heal.
Right?
Because you're using all of your energy just to survive.
Right, yeah, your body's like, hey, there's that imaginary lion that's gonna get us. We can digest later.
Or maybe
Let's
a real
move it."
lion.
Yeah, maybe it's real.
Maybe some gang of lions in Kensington.
wouldn't put it past
Oh my
Lily
goodness.
to have gangs of lion.
Yeah, Philly life.
With the news nowadays, I don't think much surprises me anymore.
It's a scary world out there.
uh,
So unless you had something else you wanted to go off on.
I do have some things I learned recently about plants that's pretty trippy, but
Do share.
yeah, about
I don't know what I'm gonna think about it, but do share.
yeah, well, and just the idea of, you know, as far as the spirituality or morality of, you know, eating animal products versus plant products, and, you know, because you're deeming certain life forms to be more intelligent than another. I was seeing some experiments and demonstrations on YouTube, and I was watching some of them again this morning. That so this one particular example, plants can actually produce music. So they were attaching electrodes to the roots of these plants and the leaves. And when attached to something that can produce sound, like a synthesizer, these plants were actually producing music. And these plants would, the sounds would actually change based on what people, what types of people were approaching the plant. Because this group of people would take turns, like walking up to the plant and engaging with it. And
That's crazy.
yeah, and so it was just
Singing plants.
Yeah, I know. And so, and apparently you can they've done different types. You can attach different ways of producing sound. But it's the vibrations that they're taking from the electrical impulses that are going through the plant, and then connecting that to something that can produce a sound. So, you know, those vibrations are always there, but it's not until you hook it up to something that can produce sound that gives you those
So
waves.
you can like perceive it.
So that we can perceive it as sound. Yeah.
That's so cool. I've heard some similar trippy things about plants and different experiments they've done with plants, and I think it's so wild.
They also did it with GMO plants versus non-GMO.
Really?
Yeah.
How was that?
So
Did they sing off tune?
so they actually didn't sing at all, but
Ooh.
and yeah, it was a
Zombie plant.
It was a blinded experiment when they first did it, and they just had the two plants. One of them was GMO and one of them was non-GMO. So double blind, because then the investigators didn't know which plant was which. But they saw that one plant was not producing sound and the other one was. And it was the genetically modified plant that was not producing sound. However, after the non-GMO plant produced sound, they put the electrodes back on the GMO plant, and it was producing sound.
Wow.
So it apparently learned something from the other plant. So it made me think about what types of resonance are being emitted, because we have so many different energies coming out of us that are actually measurable. So it you know, through either, you know, hertz, you know, or an electromagnetic field. And that can have a direct impact on the behavior of DNA. So that just made me think about the things that we consume and what might our bodies be learning from that.
Or what might we be teaching them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or teaching them.
A couple thoughts that you're getting from this is plants may be more intelligent than we thought.
Yes.
And so would you say that affects perhaps someone's impression of the ethics of eating plants versus animals?
Yes. So bringing it back to that topic, it made me realize that through the lens I kind of was mentioning before, like the Native American view of kind of honoring all energy and life form that is nourishing you as an energy cycle, because energy is not created or destroyed, it's transformed. So honoring that, and so I think that as far as the morality just of eating animal products in and of itself versus plants, I think that I think that they're both equally moral. Now if we go to the production processes, that's when I feel like we could look at the consciousness of it more. And then there are some other technical aspects too of, okay, so we have people doing transportation of these plants, and whether it's an animal farm or a plant farm, we're still taking down natural habitats that other life forms might be using. So I think that sometimes I think it's important to look at it holistically and looking at the entire picture. I think that's how I would summarize those thoughts, is that when making a choice, before you decide one thing is moral or not, really looking at the entire picture of it and each step of the way of where what you're consuming is coming from.
Wow, that was really cool. I really like that. It's very well put. Yeah.
So to try to
makes you want to pause and deeply think and take a nice sip of tea.
Just a sippable moment.
I have similar feelings about the morality of plants versus animals, but for different reasons. So it's very interesting that we have very similar opinions, but coming from different ways. I never thought about it that way, honestly. But I was thinking recently about how a lot of people who are kind of spiritual either seem to be not wanting to eat so many animals. And I found this interesting, and I was like, I feel like there's two different kind of spiritual people that I know. One kind, not to say there's only two, but on one end of the spectrum, I think people feel like it's wrong for me to say that to use something else for my own benefit, basically. And that would be assuming that we as humans don't need anyone else. We can just do it all on our own, of our own ingenuity, even if it doesn't make sense biologically with our digestive systems. We can make it happen by becoming super industrial and creating these foods out of nothing into something that we can eat. And even though there's no umami naturally in this plant, we can make it taste umami and make it taste like meat. And just create frankenfood to simulate that we don't really, I don't need you, bacon or beef or fish even, I don't need you because I can just live all on my own. And I was reflecting on this because I'm a Christian, and just like a run-of-the-mill kind of Christian. I follow Jesus. And I was thinking how, in a lot of historically in the temple, slaughtering an animal was like the job of a priest. It was a very spiritual thing. We think of it as being really grotesque and like not very, that's like the furthest thing from holy. But actually, in the middle of the holiest place of the city, they would slaughter an animal and divide it into parts. And they're basically butchers, like holy butchers. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, the way that they respected the process was sort of like a humbling reminder that I'm not able to live on my own. Like in that case, it was like, I need to sacrifice this animal to cover my sin, And as a Christian, I would say, I need Jesus as a sacrifice to cover my sin, because otherwise I'm just lost. But in the same way, it's like, unless there's some kind of, it's like a daily reminder to me that I'm in need of redemption, And maybe one day we'll all, eat plants again, because we can absorb every single nutrient from them, amazing, by some miracle. But like right now, it's very difficult to be healthy when you're not eating animal products, and that animal had to give its life so that we could live. And maybe this is like assuming that animals have a bit more of a life than a plant, I suppose. So it's coming from a different angle. But I guess you can form a relationship with an animal in a different way than you could form with a plant. Especially if you're the farmer, you feed it with your hands every day. I guess you could do that with a plant also.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I kind of think about it like that. And I recently heard this interview with a butcher who's kind of like a philosopher butcher. He was very interesting. Maybe I'll put a link below to his stuff. But he does some fancy butchering. But he was saying how when he teaches homesteaders how to slaughter their own animals on their own property, he says, like, it is the most peaceful possible death, because animals aren't afraid, and they don't know they're going to die, and they don't fear death. And even if the pig right next to them just died, they're still not afraid, and they still don't necessarily resist you any more than just, their instincts to run around, And I thought that was so interesting. And he said something like, I want to misquote him, but something like, when you have an animal, say a sheep, in a certain position where they realize you're in control and you've constrained them, they're at peace and they stop resisting. And it's like the closest thing to giving one's life for, like, willingly to someone else. And that's like the most spiritually significant thing anyone can do, I think, is like, it's like that verse, like, no greater love has anyone than this, but to give his life up for his friends, And we can all do that in small ways all the time, but not many of us will do that, like, literally, like literally die so that someone else can live. It's pretty rare these days in our region. Maybe if you're in the army or something, I don't know, but that's debatable. But
and I guess the parent-child relationship would be a little bit different there, but
that's another good example. Giving up your life for your babies.
Thinking about that having that imprint of peace in the process, I think, is extremely important, because I feel like there are energies that are affecting the environment, which therefore affects the genetic expression of, in the case of, the animals, at the time of their, I'll call it a transition to give their physical temple to us energetically, and that the way we handle things in the industrial setting does create a lot of trauma. And this is not just, woohoo, it's in the air. These things actually get encoded into the genetic makeup and that sort of trauma. And I think that on a deeper level, when we're consuming that, again, whether it's, I think that thinking about it from the animal perspective is a lot more relatable, because we're seeing a lot more personifiable expressions of fear and things like that in animals, whereas plants are a bit more of a mystery, even though they definitely are responding to the environment.
I think it's probably traumatizing to the people involved too.
I think so as well. They may be.
Nobody wants to work that job.
Right. No, and you can put that aside and kind of harden yourself to it, but I think eventually it's gonna come up at some point. That kind of, because I think that it's all in our nature to be nurturing, whether that animal is living to a natural death or whether it is, going through, more, a
purposeful.
Yeah, purposeful. I want to say the word slaughter, but that just has a different type of connotation.
Harvest?
But yes.
Maybe.
Yeah, that sort of transition. But either way, that... Oh, now where was I? This happens all the time. But I think that the peacefulness and that energy... and if it's in our nature. Yeah, this is what I think. This is where I was headed. It's in our nature to create that sort of peace. So I think that there are a lot of people who consume animal products, but they're very disconnected from it. So then they either just don't want to know about it, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to handle it. And then there are the people, and I was one of these people, that learned and felt like, oh, I've learned too much, and you just don't even want to participate in it at all, because and then...
What do you mean exactly?
When I say participate in, I mean the consumption of animal products. Yes. Yeah.
Because it's just like you're traumatized by
right.
all of the terrible ways that they do treat animals in big agriculture.
Exactly. Yeah, and if that's the only way it was done, then I, probably wouldn't. But I do, because there are the ways, wild caught seafood, peaceably raised, healthfully raised, when they're fed the right things and they're in pasture, and then peacefully transitioned to I'm gonna say transitioned instead of slaughtered
into food.
Yes. Well, and then from my perspective, even I also do follow a lot of Christian teachings and a lot of other spiritualities. So knowing that there is a deeper level of all of us that is immortal beyond our bodies. That's also something that has taught me that the consumption of a body in and of itself is, just calling that practice in and of itself evil is not necessarily correct, or at least for me it didn't feel that way.
Makes sense.
It only felt wrong when it came from that place of trauma. But
and basically like abuse could be another word.
Right, abuse. Yeah. Yeah, because when I had the our happy organic turkey at Thanksgiving, I can just sort of tell by the the energy. We have instincts in us that will guide us.
And the flavor.
Right? Of course. So yeah, the idea that we need to use chemicals to create this flavor, if you're really in tune with that, you can realize that a lot of the natural things that the earth gives us are actually extremely flavorful, but from a young age, if you're exposed to some of these chemicals, you'll be addicted to, and your brain will form connections with those flavors, and then
synthetic, fake flavors.
Exactly. That.
But once you get used to the real thing, it's really hard to turn back.
Exactly. Once you have real food, again, plants or animals, real food.
Real food.
Yeah. Hashtag real food.
When we talk about real food, we're talking about not just organic food, which has morphed in its meaning legally a lot recently, but like authentically grown food, either, you know, if it's produce grown in healthy soil without free of chemical, not just free of chemicals, but like with all the positive good microbial environment in the soil, under the sunshine, outside, nature. And if it's animals that were also outside in the sun and nature, eating grass that was, you know, in that same environment, you know?
Yeah.
Or fish in the sea or whatever.
Right, yeah.
There's no such thing as a clean sea right now. They're all pretty dirty, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I guess there's some areas of the ocean that are cleaner, like around Alaska probably.
Yeah. Actually,
There's all that fresh ice melt.
Yeah, that's where I get most of the salmon I have is from the Alaska region.
Food is such a powerful means to just feed our bodies so that our bodies can heal themselves.
Exactly.
It's so brilliant.
Yeah. The more I learned in my education about what our bodies can do, I was just thinking, why are we constantly also at the same time being taught that we're in need of intervention and this earth is a place that we can't live without interventions?
And thwarting our bodily processes with,
Exactly.
you know, how do we, and there's so much we don't understand. Like sometimes we thwart those processes because we think we're doing something right.
Right.
But we have no idea the implications of that drug, not just on this organ, but the other organ and this organ, and also all the microbiome in our guts and everywhere. So
Yeah, nothing happens in a vacuum.
just metal.
Right? Yeah, and it's and you know, that's not to say that there aren't certain technical advances that I'm not grateful for, but I just think that on a day-to-day livelihood basis, you know, we can rely on and trust the amazingness of our healing abilities and be guided towards compounds and foods and minerals and herbs that will boost our healing abilities and make that environment a healthy environment for all of the cells to do the best job that they want to do, because they're there to give us love, all of our cells.
I like to say that like there's so much brilliance in creation. Like the creator created all creation, all the created words, with every single food perfectly balanced with the right combination of vitamins and minerals so that we can actually absorb them in ways that we could never replicate with anything synthetic, you know?
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. And we don't even know some of the benefits from the real food that we eat. So I just say to people, like, you know, if you want to eat vitamins, that's great. With synthetic vitamins and like, okay, but I don't trust it. I don't trust it, Rachel.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I trust like the vitamin combos that are naturally in nature, like liver or egg yolks or something like that.
Yeah, food-based supplements. So yeah, whenever I do have supplements, they actually are coming exactly from an extract of the herb, which is essentially then a plant, or it's coming from food-based, and it's in a complex because
like cod liver oil.
Right? Having all of those vitamins in complex versus taking something out of context, or knowing that in order to, properly use vitamin C, you need other molecules around it. It's not just ascorbic acid, which is the one active part. And so what I feel like is a little bit, what modern science is a little bit blinded to is you're kind of using deductive reasoning, which has its place to like try and figure out what factors are playing a role in any given illness. So I'm not saying
it's very cool.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that
Discovery.
we shouldn't do that, but then we lose sight of the whole. So knowing that there were also, you know, other factors that our body needs to use that vitamin properly, and there's a reason why. So that's, you know, whenever I do have supplementation, it's again not because my body is unfit or, you know, incomplete, but it's actually typically because certain modern practices have also created an environment where even the real foods are not what they once were. So that generally, you know, the supplements that I'm guided to are usually things that, again, are A, naturally coming from, you know, food, real food, and then B, are supplementing what may have just been lost in certain modern practices. And I
Well said.
yeah, and I feel like your own instincts will guide you to those things that, you know, if you do have some sort of imbalance, whatever food or extract that you may need, I think. And,
Could be another layer of spirituality. Trust your instincts.
right? Yeah, a lot of, you know, heart-based breathing and prayer, connecting with, you know, Christ consciousness or whatever other consciousness you want to call it.
I always tell people, if it tastes good, then it is good. And like, trust your, unless it's like those synthetic fake flavors.
Right, that's
like,
why you have to be careful.
Taste your food, smell your food, and taste it and think, do I want to eat this? And because your body will tell you. And sometimes you crave certain foods because you need that food. And you don't need to cheese it, but you might need some cheese, or rather the nutrients that is found in cheese, which may also be found in other foods, and you have to figure that out. But yeah,
I think that it's important, even if, you know, the tastes may be different. I think if you're transitioning and, you know, want to get more into real food, at least for me, there may be a transition period where you're weaning yourself off of some of those synthetic flavors. But in my experience, once I fully transferred to, you know, mainly having those real foods, if I'm ever exposed to any of those synthetic flavors, even though my memory of those tastes, and I say like, oh yeah, that still tastes good, there's something in me that's just like, I actually don't enjoy this anymore though.
Because you know what the real thing
Right.
tastes like.
Exactly. And then
Before you didn't even know what the
Right.
real thing tastes like, maybe.
yeah,
Because you hardly ever ate it.
right. And then sometimes my body will physically also tell me that it's not okay. If I have MSG or some other synthetic flavoring, I'll get a migraine, and that's just another level of it saying, hey, maybe this is not right.
Oh my. Listen to your migraines.
Right?
Don't
It's sort
ignore
of
them,
telling,
or
yeah.
bash them down with meds. Listen to them.
Right? Yeah, it's telling you
Oh my
something.
goodness.
So yeah, so even the things that I once thought were really good, you know, eventually I just didn't crave them anymore. So it's interesting when we're still in the grips of some of those synthetic flavors, they can be addictive. So I feel like sometimes there needs to be like a combination of following your instincts, but then when
But being educated as
right,
well.
yeah, following that education, that's actually
Like, check your
Exactly.
brain and then follow your heart. But check your brain also.
right. Yeah, I think your brain can then also be directed by your heart. So your brain will then also find the information that it needs. Because then unfortunately some of our instincts may have been hijacked by some of these sorts of chemicals. At least our physical instinct, our spiritual instincts will always guide us in the right direction.
If you can discern what one is from the other.
Right? Yeah, and I think
It's gotta
that's
take some time.
Yeah, and I think that's where something like prayer or meditation can have a really big impact over health and, you know, food consumption.
Yeah, for sure. it always bothered me so much. We should wrap up soon because we'll be talking forever. We could talk forever.
Right?
It always used to bother me so much when I go to like some church function and they just order like a greasy Domino's pizza and we would like pray over the pizza and I was like, this just feels so wrong. Like, how could God possibly bless this pizza? Like, I know what it's made of. Like, all of this, you know, processed flours and processed tomato sauce. There's some corn syrup in there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's some food additives and nitrates in the pepperoni. Like, how could we possibly bless it? And, you know, maybe anything's possible. But now, sometimes I actually will get a real pizza from my Amish farmer friend, and it's real flour, real cheese, real farmed meat, and it's like really healthy for you, but it's a pizza. I would bless that pizza. But
exactly.
yeah, sometimes it's like we say one thing but we do another, and yeah, that's gotta make your heart sick after a while. Especially once you like learn about, like you were saying, the agricultural practices and where it all goes down. So thanks for having me over to your home.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Chat about
our other special guest here.
Yeah, thanks for being mostly content throughout this chat about food. One day you're gonna eat some food too.
Yeah.
Someday soon. Well, thanks for joining us, and see you next week.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.